Lewis. Prior to the green flu outbreak, Lewis was working as the junior systems analyst at Franklin Brothers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. During his lunch breaks, he would frequent the local gun range, which, although he was mocked by his fellow coworkers, this decision would prove useful given the circumstances the world finds itself in. 2 days after the first infection, Lewis would emerge from the bathroom he was hiding in to find all his coworkers had been infected by the green flu virus and turned into zombies. Lewis also holds an undergraduate degree and an MBA. He also took on an internship in Tokyo, Japan, where he learned to speak Japanese. Out of his group, Lewis is the most upbeat survivor and always attempts to keep the group's spirits up throughout every given situation, leading to frequent comments from Francis. Zoey. Before the green flu ravaged the world, Zoey was a student attending Aldrich in Philadelphia under a scholarship to become a filmmaker, which was inspired by the relationship she shared with her father, whom she would frequently watch classic horror movies with, like slashers, aliens, and ironically, zombies. With much to her mother's dislike, which would have resulted in frequent arguments between her parents, Zoey's father wanted her to walk in his footsteps and become a police officer like himself, often taking her alongside him to the shooting range to target practice. Eventually, these actions continued to add tension to her parents' relationship and soon resulted in a heated argument over a potential divorce. However, this argument was short-lived when an infected had found their way into Zoey's home and savagely attacked her mother, Carolyn. Her father wrestled with the infected and managed to subdue it before it had a chance to attack Zoey. Watching her father hold her mother in his arms, Wade, Zoey's father, had commanded Zoey to get an ambulance, and upon doing so, she returned to the horrifying sight of her mother mauling her father, and who was just about to set her eyes on Zoey. But before her decaying mother could attack, Wade managed to use the last of his fading strength to shoot Carolyn and save his daughter. However, the nightmare wasn't over yet. Approaching her father, they both knew what had to be done. In a gut-wrenching final goodbye, Zoey tells her father that she loves him before taking his life with a bullet to the head. As Zoey eventually survives and meets the group, she later discovers that it could have been possible that her father was also a carrier such as herself, and that he possibly died in vain. However, Zoey would eventually find a father figure in the group's veteran, Bill, and she would begin to establish a relationship with him similar to the one she had shared with her father. Francis. Before the outbreak, Francis lived the kind of life most people warn their kids to stay away from. Raised in New Jersey, he spent his youth in and out of trouble, rebelling against anything resembling authority. School didn't interest him, nor did a regular 9-to-5 job. What did interest him was the freedom of the open road, and the brotherhood of the biker gang he proudly rode with. Covered in tattoos that symbolize his outlaw status, Francis developed a reputation for being a short-tempered, sarcastic, and not afraid to throw a punch or Molotov. While some saw him as some sort of thug, those who really knew Francis understood there was a code he lived by: loyalty and respect. When the green flu hit, Francis didn't hesitate, and chaos didn't frighten him. With his experience in bar brawls and survivalist road trips, adapting to a world of infected was just another challenge. Though he constantly complains and claims to hate everything from boats, tunnels, and elevators, Francis proves time and time again that he'll fight tooth and nail to protect those that he loves and the people that he's with, even if he pretends not to care. His constant jabs at Lewis's optimism mask a quiet admiration, and his gruff exterior begins to crack the longer he survives with the group. In a world where trust is rare, Francis is the kind of person you would want watching your back. Bill. William Bill Overbeck was a man shaped by war. A veteran of the Vietnam War, Bill had seen humanity at its worst long before the infected ever appeared. After returning home, he struggled with peacetime, never fully able to shake the feeling that his battle wasn't over. While he drifted between jobs and veteran support groups, Bill never let go of his military discipline. He kept his M16 meticulously clean, his gear ready, and his instincts sharp. So when the green flu began to spread, Bill didn't hesitate. He reverted to what he knew: survive, protect, lead. Among the original survivors, Bill naturally assumed the role of leader, not out of ego, but necessity. He saw in Zoey a spark of youth worth preserving, in Lewis a kind of bravery he respected, and even in Francis, a chaotic ally with heart beneath the gruffness. He didn't speak much about his past, but his actions told the story of a man who made peace with sacrifice. When the group faced annihilation at a power station during the final stand in Georgia, Bill made the call no one else could. He stayed behind to activate the generator, buying time for his friends to escape. He died as he lived, fighting for others. His death leaves a quiet, painful void, especially for Zoey, who had begun to see him as the father she had lost. Though Bill is gone, his legacy continues to ripple across both survivor groups as a symbol of old world valor in a world that has nothing left. Ellis. Prior to the end of the world, Ellis was just a small town mechanic in Savannah, Georgia. He spent his days fixing cars, racing in local derbies, and hanging out with his friends, especially Keith, whose borderline suicidal adventures became the stuff of legend in Ellis's endlessly enthusiastic retellings. But beneath his good old boy charm and trucker cap lies a loyal heart and a sharp shot, trained not by professionals but through years of honest work and occasional mayhem. When Ellis realized the world became overrun by zombies, he didn't panic. He gathered supplies, used his knowledge of back roads to navigate around the chaos, and kept a level head even when things turned bleak. In his group, he's the youngest and most upbeat, often annoying Nick with his never-ending optimism and Keith stories. But Ellis is more than comic relief. He's a moral anchor. When things get dark, he reminds the group what they're fighting for. Survival, yes, but also each other. His childlike hopefulness isn't ignorance, it's resistance. And while the world around him is rotted, Ellis refuses to let it rot him. Coach. Coach, as you can tell by his name, was a high school football coach and health teacher in Savannah. A respected figure in his community, Coach, and his real name isn't really known to most people, so they just call him Coach, was a leader in every sense of the word. He lived for Friday night lights, motivational speeches, and helping students become the best version of themselves. But his glory days on the field were cut short by a persistent knee injury that made running and eventually coaching harder. Still, he pushed through, more for his students than himself. Once green flu became dominant, Coach became something else entirely, a protector. He fought his way out of the overrun school, shielding as many kids as he could, many of whom didn't make it. That loss lingers, a quiet shadow behind his otherwise booming voice and big-hearted presence, offering guidance to Ellis, keeping tensions low between Rochelle and Nick, and leading when no one else will. He's their group's Bill, their leader. Though the weight of leadership wears on him, Coach never falters. He may not be able to run like he used to, but when he stands his ground, the infected fall. Rochelle. Rochelle worked as a field reporter and producer for a Cleveland news station. Her career was just beginning to take off when she was assigned to cover the green flu evacuation in Savannah, a story that quickly turned into a survival mission. Rochelle wasn't trained for combat or chaos, but she adapted fast. When the camera stopped rolling and the city fell, she ditched the mic for a shotgun. Her calmness under pressure and ability to read people quickly made her a vital member of the team. Beneath her composed exterior is someone who saw the collapse from a unique angle. She watched institutions crumble, heard the panic behind closed doors, and began piecing together the truth. That no cavalry was coming. There was no help, and the survivors were on their own. Her journalistic instincts never fully left her. Even now she listens more than she speaks, analyzing every clue, every safe house note, every mistake the world made before it fell. Among the group, Rochelle often plays the mediator, the voice of reason. She sees through Nick's defenses, grounds Ellis's wild energy, and helps Coach bear the weight of leadership. In a world of screaming chaos, Rochelle is the quiet voice you listen to when you need to survive. Nick. Before everything went to hell, Nick was a high-rolling gambler, hustler, and con man, always dressed to impress and always one step ahead of the law. Nick lived off charm, grit, and deception. He wasn't in Savannah for pleasure or business. He was there hiding from something big. Maybe it was a debt. Maybe it was a deal gone wrong. He doesn't talk about it, and nobody in the group's dumb enough to push. At first, he saw his group as temporary partners, tools to get him through another day. But as the journey dragged on, something changed. He saw Ellis as a kid who couldn't stop talking about who he would take a bullet for, and he saw Rochelle as sharp and composed in the worst of situations. He saw Coach, a man with real integrity, still fighting for others. And though he'd never admit it, Nick started to care. His banter with Ellis is legendary. Annoyed on the surface, protective underneath. His tension with Coach is born from differing values, but over time it becomes mutual respect. Nick never set out to be anyone's hero. He still keeps his guard up, still counts exits, still hides aces up his sleeve, but every now and then, when no one's looking, he chooses to fight for someone else other than just himself. That's how you know the con man might just be becoming something more.